I'm Alex.
And I'm Shane.
And this is Race Per Minute.
Hello and welcome back to Race Per Minute. Today, we're going to be talking about the Bahrain Grand Prix and what a race we have to discuss indeed. After a year of delays, we finally got to see the new cars in action. We also got to see the first glimpse of the pecking order going into the 2022 season. Many teams surprised us, for better and for worse, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So without further ado, Alex, for the first time this year, would you like to start off the podcast with any pre-race talking points?
Well, what I want to go with first is qualifying. I don't really have anything for free practice, and there's so much to look at in the race.
Straight to qualifying.
I think we can jump straight into our qualifying session. It was interesting that when they were chatting before the session started, this was just before Q1, I think, Martin Brundle on the broadcast said, and I'm slightly paraphrasing here, it's a case of it ain't broke. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. This format really seems to work, referring to the traditional Q1, Q2, Q3 qualifying format. Crofty said, I completely agree. I think maybe revealing that they don't think too much of the sprint qualifying. And I do wonder, if they valued the sprint qualifying that high, surely it would start the season, maybe. But
True.
We are still having it this season, I think. It's still happening at some races.
Is it 6 or 3 races?
I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah.
I hope it's 0, but unfortunately, it's not.
I'm sure that's not the case.
But anyway, so I thought that was rather revealing commentary from the two pundits. And the other big thing for me, actually no, I'm not going to talk about this bit yet. I'm going to talk about this bit later. The next thing, let's just go straight to qualifying results.
Okay.
There's just a few complaints I want to get out of the way early on but I won't go to that yet. Let's talk about Ricciardo being out in Q1.
Sure.
P18. At this point, and we'll go into McLaren in more detail later, but at this point I was thinking, COVID might have hit him pretty hard. Lewis was saying that it was a big, impact on him, and he'd obviously not been in the car since Barcelona. So I was thinking, well, it's not great, but we saw Ricciardo having some poor qualifyings even in the midst of last season, and I don't know, maybe there's still some time to be spent here. I was trying to stay as positive as possible because it was pretty deflating. It was like, oh, here we go again with qualifying and Daniel Ricciardo. So at that point, I have to say I was trying my best to stay positive, even though it was not great news for McLaren when it came to qualifying. Also interesting that Hülkenberg beat Stroll.
Yeah.
Both Aston Martins were also out in Q1, but Hülkenberg did very well to beat Stroll there, and they're very impressive. So then I kind of had to think differently about Ricciardo, because I thought, well, Hülkenberg hasn't even done anything in these cars, and he's managed to do pretty well, all things considered. One thing I wanted to ask you about qualifying, Shane, is now we have no requirement for the teams to use their Q2 tyre to start the race. For the top 10, that is. So everyone gets to choose what tyre they want to start the race on. What do you think about that change?
I'm on the fence, like I am with most things, because I think it's great that there's a free set of tyre choice, because that makes qualifying all the more interesting. It means every team can push as hard as they want in Q2 to get through to Q3 without being penalised that you have to start the race on that used set of tyres. However, what was quite nice about the traditional rule, as in like the 2021 rule, was that you got the top 10, but then from 11th to the back of the grid, they were all on fresh set of tyres, because it was always like they had a second chance to try and overtake the front runners, because the front runners were on slightly used tyres. So it created a little bit of racing, a little bit of drama, especially if you're sat in P11 and P12 and you only missed out by, Q3 by a tenth or two. You're on a brand new set of tyres now, whereas the guy who's qualified in P10 is on a used set of tyres. So maybe there's some strategy to had during the race. So I think, I don't know, it works both ways, doesn't it? I think for the race itself, what we saw, it didn't really have much of an impact, and we had the bizarre strategies going on. I think it will take a couple more races for me to fully see what the impact is on the sport, though. But I don't mind. The racing was good, which is all we asked for.
Yeah, I think that I would have to see some data, like you say, on what the difference actually is between allowing people to choose and forcing them to start on their Q2 tyre in the top 10. Be interesting to see if there is much of a difference when it comes to the race, because those medium tyres could last longer, it could put them into a different position once pit strategy comes into play. So yeah, but I also really like the idea of in every qualifying session, the drivers being able to push to the max and get the absolute full potential out of the car, and to have that really make the order stack up on that merit. So yeah, requires a few more races to be certain, but I quite like the change. It's a change that I think is interesting and not too impactful.
Yeah, and that's quite nice.
I don't necessarily mind big changes. I don't want to sound like I'm totally against them messing with the format, but I think there is a distinction between trying to make progress and needlessly tinkering with things. And yeah, this is sort of a happy medium change, maybe. Or see what I did there? Instead of happy soft change. Anything else you want to talk about when it comes to qualifying, Shane?
Well, I was very impressed with Haas and Alfa Romeo. They really stepped up from last year. Haas K-Mag managed to finish P7, which was great. I don't think he got his final run in either. I think he had like a hydraulic issue after his first run in Q3, which put him like P6, and then he dropped to P7, not being able to get his final run in, which I think is absolutely fantastic for Haas. That was incredible. I was quite reserved. I was trying to make excuses a lot through qualifying because of the whole McLaren situation. So very much like you, I saw Ricciardo in 18th, and I thought, well, he's had COVID. He had issues in FP2, which then bled into FP3. So maybe he's not had much time in the car, which is why his performance wasn't ideal. And then I saw Haas in Q3, and I thought, this is amazing, but I'm going to hold back celebrating until the race, because usually if we see a car outperform itself, like we have seen Russell do in the past with a Williams, they only get eaten up then in the race. I was very happy for Haas, and I was thinking, hopefully this success maintains and continues, and they don't just fall backwards during the race after an extraordinary qualifying session, which I'm glad to see wasn't the case. I also thought it was quite hilarious that Bottas split the Mercedes drivers and started alongside Lewis Hamilton for, I don't know, the 60th time in his career.
Well, he split them by some margin because Russell was P9.
Absolutely. I mean, Russell had a howler of a qualifying session on his last run. He went basically straight on at the first corner and then lost the second there. So who knows what his time would be representatively. But you've got to do it on the final lap. And this is what you've got to get used to in a top tier car, or somewhere near the top tier car. You've got to be able to put it together on the last lap to qualify high. But qualifying was really exciting. It was a session I was really looking forward to this weekend, because even through practice, I sat down watching it with my other half, Hannah, and she was like, so what do you think? Because we've got this little fantasy F1 league between us. Who do you think we should put in my team? And I was like, nobody knows. I was like, nobody's showing any kind of pace in practice. I was like, wait until Q1. By then it's too late on the league game. But I was like, we won't see anyone's pace until at least Q1 or Q2. And then the gloves are off on Q3. And it was just amazing to see this pecking order. Just amazing to see this qualifying result. I mean, look at that grid. And you think, yes, this could be a great year.
Yeah, lots of surprises amongst the results overall. And of course, Charles Leclerc nabbing pole. Not his first pole, of course. He's actually a very experienced qualifier. And I think Carlos Sainz has said that he considers Leclerc to be probably the best qualifier on the grid in the dry. That's what he reckons. I think he said that last year. He's been very complimentary of Charles. Like, for example, he was very open about the fact that he was surprised how far back he was behind his teammate, Sainz was saying. And that he had to overcome half a second, 0.6 or something, and that he was slowly getting there. And his final lap was pretty close. I think he was within about 10th and a half or something like that. So yeah, he did very well to claw it back, but it was interesting that there is when given the opportunity, Charles Leclerc is unquestionably world champion material, I think. I've been thinking that since he got into Ferrari. I've been thinking if Ferrari do make a capable car, this guy's like no doubt championship material. So we've seen that in race 1, and he started off nicely with his pole.
Yes.
Shane, take us on to the next bit then, I think. Next talking point.
Right, should we go straight on to the race then? We're done with qualifying. I want to continue with Haas, if you don't mind. I like a little bit of a success story because I think it's good to start off the podcast on a positive. No doubt we'll move into McLaren later on, and there'll be a little bit of a low point, and then we'll try and end with another positive. But Haas, what a brilliant job they've done at the first race of the year. I guess with any team, like I've mentioned, it's always a risk if you out-qualify your car, you're going to go backwards during the race. However, this time it was not the case for the team. Within a couple of corners, Kevin found himself in front of a Mercedes and in front of a Red Bull and behind a Mercedes. And I thought to myself, how long is he going to last in this position? This Red Bull's going to fly past him and the Mercedes going to just drive off in the distance like we've seen time and time again. But it wasn't the case, Alex. It wasn't the case. We saw some racing. We saw K-Mag in a Haas fight Lewis. Like, he was diving down the inside of some corners. He was trying to go around the outside of turn 4 a couple of times. And then when Lewis finally, like, ever so slightly got away from K-Mag, he was defending from Perez. And we had some great battles with Perez in the opening couple of laps. I thought this was absolutely fantastic. He didn't lose the pace in the Mercedes. He was on the back of Lewis Hamilton for a decent amount of time, just right up until the first lot of pit stops, because Lewis was one of the first drivers. I think he was the first driver to pit this race, so this year. Like I said, he's had some great defensive battles with Sergio Perez and finished the race in an amazing P5. Now, I know both Red Bull's drivers retired in the last couple of laps, so that would have put him P7, but that's still a huge win for the Haas F1 team, and you can see it when they celebrate how much it means to them. And there's a warm feeling in my heart when I was watching this, or when I'm talking about it now, seeing a team which has struggled so much over the last couple of years, scoring no points, no success, no positive media whatsoever, and they come away from the first race of the season finishing in P5. That's incredible. I mean, as for Mick Schumacher, what a great race. Yep, he didn't qualify in the top 10. That's not a problem. This is Mick. It's his second year in Formula One. He's going up against a driver who's been in the sport for a long old time, but admittedly has taken a year out. So Mick was unlucky because the majority of the race, he was actually running in points paying position. However, after a late safety car, he lost a few positions on the restart and then came home in P11 after the retirements. I mean, we've seen the Haas at the back of the grid showing no real pace at all. And yesterday, we're recording this on Monday, everyone. So on Sunday, we saw a glimpse of what could be a very strong season for the American F1 team. And it was only today when I was looking through the constructors' standards. And I know it's the first race of the year. And everyone who's watching this on YouTube, you can see how much I'm smiling. They're sat in third. They're sat in third place, Haas. This is amazing. Incredible stuff. I mean, what more is there to add? Alex, take over from me because I just go on forever about how good this team have done.
Yeah, I'm not sure them being third in the constructors means anything after one race, but
no, of course it doesn't. But it's just lovely to see, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good that they've started so positively. I think describing it as out qualifying the car, I think, is a bit of a disservice to Haas, really, because that is the pace of the car. I mean,
yeah, of course,
you can't break the laws of physics. The car can do what the car can do. So it's, that was what the car was capable of. And Magnussen actually got up to P5 right at the beginning. He had a really good start. So it was actually that he lost places to Perez. He got, I seem to recall that he got passed by Perez and then tried to get the move back again. So he was actually battling with Perez then.
Yeah.
And then he lost the place to Russell after locking up in turn 1. So he kind of made his own little mistakes to kind of lose those positions, but then got them back because obviously the Red Bulls both retired. So Magnussen was looking really, really confident out there. He looked like he'd never been away, which was really impressive. Schumacher, I think, has got some work to do because now he's got a teammate who immediately seems to look right at home. And last year, when he had Mazepin as his teammate, it was probably pretty easy to look like top dog. Whereas here, he might get found out a little bit. Like, a surname does not a great racing driver make. And, no disrespect to him and his family or anything like that. But you've got to actually be able to do it as well. And I think there's a risk that Schumacher might get found out a little bit. So we'll see. We'll see if he's able to do it with Magnussen across the season. I think my money would be on Magnussen being very, very strong, though, based on that first performance alone, because the ability to step into that team after being away with a totally new car he didn't do any testing, did he? No, he was in testing.
He was in Bahrain for testing.
He was in Bahrain for
Barcelona.
Testing, So, yeah, very, very impressive from Magnussen. So good news for Haas at last. After spending so long, coming a bit of a laughing stock, they've brought a lot of dignity back in one race. So good on them. My first thing that I want to talk about when it comes to talking points is I I think, the best news to come out of this this race, which is
Okay.
that it appears that the regulations have actually improved the racing. I think that's the best thing that's come out of this. There's lots to be happy about, but we can see that cars appear much more capable of following. They can attack much easier. It looked like cars being able to stay close to fight back after being passed. We saw a lot of sort of long snaking of cars as they went along in the early stages. For example, the grouping together of all the cars in those first few laps seemed a lot more. They seemed a lot closer together for longer than they had done in previous races. That was the way that it appeared. And we saw plenty of overtaking. There was no shortage of overtaking during this race. There was lots of it. And DRS didn't seem completely overpowered, as far as I could tell. We did see Leclerc and Verstappen having a great battle around lap 17, 19. They were sort of trading places quite a few times and following each other closely. It wasn't like someone got past and disappeared. Which begs the question, is it time that we see DRS removed sooner rather than later?
Do you want me to answer that?
If you want. I mean,
sorry, I thought it was a rhetorical question. I don't think DRS should be removed, to be fair. I mean, we saw Verstappen drop after having a brilliant couple of laps, like you said, 17, 18 and 19 of trading places and racing into turn 1, 2, 3 and then 4. Verstappen did lock up on that final approach and then dropped to 1.1 seconds behind Leclerc going down the back straight and then wasn't able to... we don't know what his battery was doing, whether he was on a push lap or whether he's attacking. But then he didn't have that attempt again because he just didn't close up. And whether that was to do with the DRS or not, we're talking about a tenth of a second. So I think the DRS still has a lot to play for. It would be amazing to get rid of it and just have natural racing all over again. But I think we still need that little bit of encouragement or that little bit of an opportunity to get that position back or to encourage that overtaking. So I think the DRS has done a stay for a couple more. Well, it's done a stay for a couple more years. And yeah, it would be good to get rid of it if the racing was naturally good, but we just need to give those drivers a second chance.
Yeah, I suppose it does allow the kind of trading of places like we've seen to some extent. So I don't think they'll get rid of it anytime soon, but I think that it would be nice to see a desire to have it removed sooner rather than later, rather than just assuming that it's a thing in racing now. It would be nice not to have it, I think. I think it would be preferable not to have that, but we'll see. I think the fewer sort of, can't really think of a better word for them than gimmicks, but it is a bit of it. It does feel like a bit of a gimmick in like you sort of get to this bit and you press a button and you know, at least with the energy overtake button and that, there's a certain strategy involved in your energy store and all the rest of it and harvesting energy. And with DRS, it's just this specific place once you get within a certain distance, and it's like it's admitting that the racing is not good enough for it not to be there. It's like an admission of defeat in a way. So it'd be nice that there could be some movement to get it out and gone as soon as possible, really. Whether they can do that within the next couple of years, I have no idea. But I thought I'd pose the question anyway, because I thought the racing genuinely looked stronger and looked closer together. And that was really encouraging. That's the best news to come out of this race, is that we can hopefully have a season of races like that, because it was thoroughly entertaining.
Yeah, because all through testing, we saw cars following each other, and instantly after the testing, they were straight in the media pen, and all the journalists were like, could you follow? How easy was it to follow? How easy was it to get past? And we were like, well, it's just testing. We have no idea what the cars are running with regards to fuel loads or, what packages they're running. So no one really knew if these new regulations were going to help racing or go in the opposite direction. But thankfully, like you said, the racing does look to be stepping up and does look to be much better and easier to follow, because like you said, for the first 10 laps, we saw snakes and snakes of cars. There wasn't much field spread at all, which was great. And every time you switched to the camera on the pit straight or on the main straight, there were cars going side by side trying to overtake, going into turn 1 the majority of times, which is brilliant to see.
Yeah, there was lots of overtaking, some of which we missed, but
yes,
we'll come to that. What's next?
Right, I think it's time to get serious. It's time to get upset.
Okay.
It's time to talk about McLaren. Yeah, so this is a bit more of, I'm sure, a joint talking point, because I no doubt this will be on your list of things to talk about as well. So very briefly, what started off to be a pretty terrible weekend for McLaren ended that way as well, with neither driver scoring points for the first race this year. It was P14 for Daniel and P15 for Lando after a race to forget. I didn't actually see them switch towards the end of the race. I thought Lando was ahead for the majority of it, but clearly after the safety car, something happened between those two, or they just switched positions. I'm not sure what happened. First of all, McLaren rolled the dice very early on in the race with an alternative strategy, because they were the only cars starting on the medium tyre, whereas everyone else was on the soft. That looked like instantly quite a bad decision, because they both dropped positions after the first couple of laps and were pretty much, I can't remember what positions they were in going into the first couple of laps, but they dropped a couple of positions.
Ricardo was last. Ricardo was dead last at the end of lap one.
And Lando wasn't far off it after a couple of laps. But I think that was more to do with the tyre choice than the pace of the car. I think that was just a bad strategy call. And we're going to get these strange strategy calls as well when you've got cars at the back of the grid, and you can, each and every driver now can have a fresh set of tyres, whatever tyre they want to run. I think, it's a whole new ball game. But it didn't get much better. And the comparison I made was, there are 8 Mercedes engines or 8 Mercedes-driven cars on the grid. You've got Mercedes, Aston Martin, Williams, and Mercedes and McLaren. And at some points during this race, 6 of those cars, everyone apart from Mercedes, was at the back 6 of the pecking order. They were from P14 to P20, all Mercedes cars. Apart from the 2 Mercedes drivers who were, P7 and 8 or whatever they were doing, the rest of the cars were alternative powered engines. So when I hand over to you, we're going to talk about McLaren as a whole and what they've done. And obviously they look quite positive coming out of Barcelona and in Bahrain. But do you think, this is a second question for you, do you think this is a McLaren problem, or do you think this is a Mercedes engine problem, and now the responsibility and the pressure is on Mercedes to fix or upgrade or produce a better engine, which isn't going to happen in the next race? It might not happen in the next 2 or 3 races. They've only got a certain amount of engines they can use this year, and they want to get it right. But is it a McLaren problem, or is it a Mercedes problem, or is it both?
Yeah, it's got to be a bit of both, really, hasn't it? Starting with Mercedes, there's some indication that Mercedes might have the weakest engine at the moment, because the clearest one for me was right at the beginning. Hamilton got an amazing start, got away really well, and was closing up on Sainz to go for it. But then once they were, a little bit away, say a third of the way down the straight, and were really starting to go up the gears, Sainz just started disappearing. So Hamilton had got this way better start and was getting as much of a slipstream as anyone else around him. And the Ferrari just pulled away as if the engine just wasn't there. It just wasn't keeping up. Or maybe it's the drag of the car. I don't really know. But the engine definitely plays the biggest part there. And I thought that was pretty surprising to see. Compare this to Ferrari, where only one of the 6 Ferrari-powered cars was out of the top 10 by the end. Meanwhile, all the cars that got lapped were Mercedes-powered. So, and the only real engine change this season is the requirement for, they have some requirement for 10% sustainable ethanol,
yes.
I think it is.
Yep.
I'm not really sure what the implications of that are. If anyone is engineering-minded and knows what that means for the engines, then let us know. But otherwise, the engines, I think, are frozen until at least 2025. So, of course, this would happen the season after McLaren start using Mercedes engines. It's Honda all over again. I remember Ron Dennis saying, this is why if you're a customer team, you can't win titles, because you're always going to be at a disadvantage. And this is why we're going to partner up with Honda and create this partnership. And then they were rubbish for a really long time. So I'm a bit worried that that's going to happen again. But then McLaren have to take some stick for that as well, because the car looked pretty understeery, and neither driver seemed particularly happy with it. Neither driver really seemed to have a handle on the car. And whilst, yes, there are going to be various aspects of the engine that you don't really have a lot of control over or a lot of customizability over, because you're not the ones making the engines. And in some cases, the gearboxes and various other things as well. You've still got the Mercedes cars themselves looking much stronger. So you've got a fellow powered car to compare yourself to, and the Mercedes and McLaren were occasionally kind of close, nearing certain points of last season. So to then suddenly be that far away, well, that's got to be the team, surely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great detail you went into there. I completely agree. It's a massive shame, isn't it? Coming from last year, and McLaren have been on this really positive trajectory for the last 3 or 4 years, coming from when they had that black livery or that that McLaren Honda livery, and they were at the back of the grid, and now they've slowly moved up to the midfield. And then last year they were competing for third place. I mean, they secured third place in 2020 and then dropped to fourth in 2021. This year, a lot of people thought McLaren could be fighting Ferrari again. McLaren could be up against the Mercedes. This is amazing. And I'm not going to lie, a little bit of me hung on to that hope after qualifying. I was like, oh, maybe it's just a bad qualifying session. Hopefully, these guys can push forward during the race with a really good strategy. Maybe their race pace is so much better than their qualifying pace. But it just wasn't the case at all for either. And it was such a shame.
There's no pace.
There was no
pace at all.
It's going to be weeks before we see any alternative upgrades coming in, especially from the Mercedes, because you can't just roll out a new engine in a week's time for Saudi Arabia. You can't just do that. So they're going to be struggling next week. And you're only limited to 3 engines a year, aren't you? So Mercedes
I'm not really sure what they can do with the engines, though, because it's my understanding that the whole thing is sort of frozen and that there's I don't really know what it is you can do. Maybe there are some changes you can make to software and, the computery side of things, maybe.
Well, maybe because the Ferrari seems to be really good at low speed. It seems to be really good at handling low speed corners, and that's where they had such a massive advantage this weekend. Whereas the Mercedes, they openly said their low speed corner trajectory is shocking. It is really bad. They can't handle low speed corners at all. And obviously Mercedes have got that porpoising issue still, whereas McLaren
looked really bad at times, didn't it? That porpoising on the Mercedes.
It really did. And that's something which McLaren didn't really have problems with in the second half of testing either.
I was really positive
no
about
porpoising issue. And it was like, oh, maybe they've got a massive advantage over some competitors because they haven't got these issues. They had that brake issue obviously going into practice and after testing, but they brought new brake upgrades and that seemed to have temporarily fixed the issue. They're still trying to understand it, but it wasn't the braking which was causing them issue. We didn't see them very often lock up into turn 1, where they have done throughout the whole of 3 practice. It was just the pace, and well, I don't know what else there is to add.
They seem to have some cooling issues as well. I think Ricciardo is being told to do various things to keep engine bits cool and the like, so that may have been a factor as well. But
what team was it who got told not to come into the pits because the engine because it was too hot? Did you hear that radio call? I can't remember for the life of me.
No, I
there was a team which was due to box, and then they came on the pit radio and they were like, "No, you have to do another lap to cool the engine or to cool the tires or whatever it was because it's too hot."
Not sure.
I'll find out and I'll pop it on the Twitter page referencing this video. But yeah, that if you've got anything else to add to McLaren, that's all from me. Just a pretty disappointing. That's a real disappointing weekend.
Yeah, the whole thing took on the appearance of an extended test. Trying out these different tyres, and Ricciardo went on to the softs after 17 laps, so he was pitting not too long after some people had done on softs. I mean, Stroll did 18 laps on softs, and most other people were 14 or 15, so he wasn't long after that, so the mediums didn't really help out there at all. Norris managed a bit longer on the mediums, but that actually seemed to hurt him more in the long run because he switched to hards, whereas Ricciardo went to softs. And then, so you can see how it looked like a test.
Yeah.
Because you've basically got one car and one tyre. They were basically seeing how the car was reacting to the tyres. And that was the point at which I realised they're just seeing what it's like now.
They've written off this race.
Yeah, so it's just... And then Ricciardo went onto the hards and lasted 11 laps because there was a safety car. So then both cars went onto softs after Norris had switched to softs only 4 laps prior to that. So then they put another set of softs. It was all over the place. And they were obviously just seeing how the car reacted to different tyres. And they were just getting more data, I think, because, it was pretty clear very early on McLaren were going absolutely nowhere and were basically battling Williams at the back. And it was just, was rubbish. But we've got to soldier on. Got faith in the team, so it's just one of those things, isn't it? Like it's not like I haven't been here before. So
welcome back.
So it's not nice to be back. Not thank you for having me. Let's move on to something a little bit more upbeat now.
Go ahead. What's your next talking point?
Well, I wanted to ask you just a quick one about what you thought about the new. Well, maybe this won't be positive, but what were your thoughts on the new on-screen graphics?
I hate them.
It's got a new look. You hate them?
I hate them.
Okay, that's very strong reaction.
They take up way too much space, especially the tower on the left-hand side, the timing tower on the left-hand side. I find it takes up way too much space. They've got the drivers' names and then they've got the numbers in the font of the driver themselves, which I find really hard to read. And I've got a decent-sized TV and I find it really hard to read. I mean, my eyesight's fine as well, despite wearing glasses. Just want to point that out. But comparing it to a couple of years ago where you had like the team logo and then the color of the logo as well, it's very easy to identify what driver was in that pecking order. It was like, oh, where's the McLaren? Let's have a look at the orange. Let's go find the orange. It was just so much easier to understand and establish. I found this one really hard to read. Just not confusing. I just found it harder to read. Plus, they were making constant mistakes. Like the timing tower would go, and then it would be Alonso's name and his like sector split was still on the screen, but it was in white, so you could just see Alonso and then his time, and it was the only thing on the screen where the timing tower would be, and it was where his name would have been. It was really strange. And also, at the start of the race, they had the timing tower, but it was half of their surname. It was Hamil, and then Leclerc, it wasn't their full name. It like they glitched out and it gave us half the timing tower. And I was like, this is really bizarre. The only thing I did like about it was the radio thing. I thought was quite nice and quite tidy. I find it all a bit big though, to be honest. I just find it a bit big and a bit cumbersome. It's like they flicked on dark mode. On your phone or your computer, you can go from like day mode to night mode or whatever it is. And I just thought it's just all a bit big and cumbersome, and I don't like it. But I assume because you've asked this question and because you wanted to talk about something more positive, you quite like the changes.
Yeah, I do actually.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure. Well, obviously, you may not be a fan of them. I'm not sure anything that you said there warrants hatred of them, but I mean, let's
ruin the race.
You said that they take up a lot of space. I'm not sure they take up any more space than the old graphics. There is there is one bit in them that is unnecessary. It says like race at the top, which that doesn't really need to be there because we know that it's a race. You could get rid of that bit, but I don't know. It shows more information at once, which is quite nice. You get sort of constant view of what tyre they're on, which is very handy. That was one bit of information that would sort of come and go in the old on-screen graphics, and I thought, well, why can't you how hard could it be to just have a little like red S next to their name? And that's exactly what they've done. I don't know. I think being able to quickly see who is what car, who is what team, maybe that just comes down to how people read information differently and people sort of see things differently. When I look at it, I can see the logo and I know the logos. So I don't find that difficult. Like I can see the shapes and that's not a problem personally, but some people maybe find that harder to read. I don't know. I like the way that they look as well. I think the actual kind of style of them is pretty sleek. Like you say, it's like dark mode, but I like that. I'm a dark mode kind of guy. So
yeah, well, so am I. But
I like
it.
That.
It just didn't fit. Didn't fit for me.
All right. I rather like it myself. I like all the new sort of photos and graphics and the bits that come up, and they do need to fix a few errors. There are obviously like problems and errors at the moment to do with like technical stuff, but yeah, I can deal with that. Like that's not that big a deal. It's like a game coming out and having a few bugs. Like computer games are really, really hard to make. Like it's so complicated. You cannot even begin to comprehend. I've been involved in some game development, and like I'm not a programmer, but I've been involved in game development, and I've seen how complicated it is. And when you've seen that side of it, a few bugs is understandable. Like it's complicated stuff. I can't imagine all the data they have to feed into that and what runs it. It must be this labyrinthine operation. I can forgive a few technical hitches. If it keeps doing it 20 races into the season, okay, then I'll be annoyed. Then
you'll hate it.
Come on, like you've got the ridiculous amount of resources here. You can definitely do something about this. But first race of the season, all right, I can handle that. That's fine.
There we
A
go.
few other little bugs that that we could add onto your list are saying that multiple drivers have purple sectors. Well, you can't have
That's
two
impossible.
drivers that are purple in sector 1. And just a few other visual glitches. And I remember at the beginning of the race, maybe this was more of a informational error, but remember at the start of the race, they were talking to the Crown Prince of Bahrain, but it was given the label of the FIA president, Mohammed bin Sulayman.
Nice.
Which was not a good look. I'm sure it was just an honest mistake, but I didn't. I certainly didn't hate them. I thought that they were quite nice. I like the new look. Am I to assume that I'm like in the minority here?
No, I think you're in the majority. Because I've seen a lot of people on social media saying how much they like them. I've only seen a couple of people agreeing with me and say they look big and cumbersome and horrible.
Maybe it depends on what sort of screen you're watching it on.
Shall we run a poll on Twitter after this?
Maybe
we'll put
that's
a poll
a
on
good
Twitter and
idea,
see what the results are.
Another interesting poll would be to see how people watch it, because obviously the graphics are quite different if you're watching it on some massive, great big TV. I mean, I don't, but let's say you do. Like, maybe it's less of a big deal, or maybe it could be more of a big deal because they take up that much more of your visual space. So I don't know. I'm not quite sure how it would work. It's one of those things that must be, again, that ties into how difficult it is to make something like that, because you think, oh, all you've got to do is make it easy to read. Yes, you've got to make it easy to read on phones, on tablets, on computers, on big screens, on small screens. And then people, have different types of screens, and people see things differently, and it's so complicated. It's so complicated. So, but I think it's a good start. I like it.
We shall agree to disagree, but we've got a bit of a split decision there, quite literally. But yeah, ask me again in a couple of races' time, and I'll see if I've warmed up to them. Maybe it was just a shock of having something new, and I didn't like it.
And there was no useless AWS nonsense.
I did like, especially at the start of the season. At the start of the session, they were like, "Oh, here's the pit stop strategy powered by AWS," and I'd forgot about AWS, and I was like, "Oh no, we better not get the how easy it is to overtake and all this malarkey and all that kind of stuff." But we didn't get any of that, which was quite nice. I quite liked it. It was just racing.
I don't like the fact that they have to go all glory to Hypnotoad every time they bring up one of these graphics, like powered by AWS. Just show us the graphic. Like, we know it's Amazon. Like, just get on with it. You've
mentioned it every race for the last 3 years.
How long is it going to be before every single on-screen graphic is powered by or sponsored by some people? And it's just, it gets a bit obnoxious after a while. But slap your logo on it and get on with it.
And make it small.
Right. What do you want to go over next, Shane?
Should we talk about Red Bull?
Okay.
And then I'm sure we'll leave Ferrari or whatever your last talking point is to the end, because this is my last one. Red Bull suffered a double DNF towards the end of the race, with both drivers suffering similar issues with the powertrain. Actually, retrospectively, I've read into this. They had fuel delivery issues, both cars. Max had some issues before that with his steering and a hydraulic leak. He didn't lose power steering, but he certainly made it more difficult. But both cars suffered the same fuel delivery failure, or the fuel wasn't delivering enough to the engine, which caused the engine to stall and then shut down. Obviously, Max trundling his way into the pits, and then Perez halfway through turn 1. Which, on another note, it looked like Hamilton had clipped Perez going into that turn 1, because I saw him overtake him, and I thought, oh no, has Hamilton spun Perez around for third place? And then the replay came in. I was like, oh no, thankfully Perez just lost it on his own. In all fairness, if your car stops halfway through a corner, you're done to do something other than what you wanted to do. Let's get back to the script. Let's talk about Max a little bit and how frustrated he was getting on the team radio. And obviously, we only hear 1% of what's going on the team radio throughout the whole race. We never get to see the big picture. But Red Bull went for the undercut twice during this race against Ferrari's Charles Leclerc. And both times Red Bull told Max to take it easy on the outlap. And he wasn't the only driver who was told to take it easy on the outlap. Multiple drivers were told this. And I think it was something to do, we've got these standardized tyre warming blankets now, haven't we, which go to the same temperature for every team. Clearly, they're learning about these new, bigger tyres, and they wanted to take it easy on the outlap, because I think drivers have gone out normally, burnt up quite a lot of their tyres and had to pit quite earlier than expected. So He was told to take it easy on the outlap and warm up the tyres gradually. And both times Max came out and then the Ferrari pit and then the Ferrari came out and Max was just behind Charles. And the first time we had this brilliant battle, didn't we? We had like the 17 to 19 overtakes constantly. It was fantastic. The second time, Max came out a little bit further behind Charles Leclerc and was within reaching distance. I think they had a couple of goes again. But Max got on the radio really showing his frustration, basically saying that he's not gonna listen to him again. He's not doing that again, and he will push the next time he boxes because he could have had Charles twice in when he went for the undercut. It's the whole point of the undercut, isn't it? To bit box early, put on a fresh set of tyres, push, and trying to undercut the car in front. And my question is, should have if Max did push and defy team orders or just defy the strategy or ignore the strategy, it's not really defying it. Do you think he would have overtaken Charles? And do you think he would have made it stick and maybe maintain the lead instead of going in for these battles? And what do you make of the whole Red Bull situation with regards to Max and their performance and the issues they've had this weekend?
It was, it was a bit of a fall from grace and a very sudden one for Red Bull. Obviously, they had 3 of the cars with their engines end because of engine troubles. They had 3 cars with their engines out because of that, so that's not a good start for them. Although, I also saw that it was something to do with fuel flow or fuel delivery or something like that. Aren't those parts of the car spec?
They're standardized parts, aren't they?
So, don't know, interesting one. Something to do with what they're doing with them, perhaps. And maybe they'll raise some hell with the technical people over, it doesn't suit us because ours broke and other people's haven't, but ignore that. We want what works for us.
Help.
Because, you would, I guess. You would, wouldn't you? So that was not good for them, obviously. And I think, Max was sounding very frustrated on the radio. Obviously, he was in the midst of it, and you're defending world champion, and you're losing the race for something where you think, I could have done something differently and got in front. I seem to recall that there was a conversation going between the pundits, between like Crofty and Ted, that the data didn't really support that.
Oh, okay.
And that it was unlikely, and that Leclerc's pace overall was just too strong, and that even if Verstappen had come out ahead of him, there wasn't a sense that he could have held onto it because he was trying to attack, and his tyres were then getting worn out, and he started locking up, and it seemed like the deg was just affecting the Red Bull more, and that Ferrari overall seemed to be doing much better with their tyres. Leclerc was getting messages in his ear, his engineer saying, Verstappen's deg is much higher than ours and that sort of thing. So understandably, Verstappen felt that he could have done something differently, but I don't think the data supported that. So no, I think Leclerc was pretty much in control. He was the only thing that could have stopped him was like some kind of a reliability thing or a mistake on his own part, because I think pure pace of the car and the man behind the wheel meant that he was going to be pretty much unstoppable today. I think it was monster performance.
Did you hear that, speaking about Leclerc, that on the last lap of the race, he jokingly told his engineer that he had engine problems, and apparently they all very much panicked in the Ferrari garage, and Leclerc had to was like, I'm joking, I'm
There's something strange with the engine.
Yeah, because obviously it was only a couple of years ago where Leclerc was running this race with the what was it, 2019 when he was winning the race, and then his engine conked out. It was that illegal fuel flow, wasn't it? And that was what blew up on him. But he lost that race.
There genuinely was something strange with that engine.
There was something strange with that engine. It should have been a controversial year for Ferrari, but it was all kind of swept under the rug.
It's easy when you get a report and then nobody gets to read it. It's quite easy to make it swept under the rug. Yeah.
But it was good to see him in his element. Like he looks comfortable in that position. He looks comfortable in that car. It's a combination not to be messed with. But that was Red Bull.
Yeah, just to sort of add on to that as an annex to that conversation, seeing as we're talking about what were the top 2 teams in this race. Obviously, Red Bull didn't end up that way, but just looking at Ferrari overall, Leclerc, as I said, handled the race very well. There was a sense of vulnerability for them during the pit stops. Nobody really had a handle on what was best to do.
No.
So yeah, it was a bit all over the place. But one opportunity for Verstappen that Leclerc nipped in the bud very nicely was the safety car restart. Because Verstappen tried to pressure him by coming up really close and alongside, kind of like, bullying him a little bit into
Which he
getting it
does,
done.
yeah.
Which he does do and is a perfectly legitimate tactic as long as he doesn't overtake. But it meant that the way that Leclerc waited and left that room for Verstappen on the inside of the final corner meant that he approached it quite tightly. Normally, you'd expect to go much further down the straight and then gun it so they don't have this big slipstream on you. That's normally the case with Bahrain, but no, he just cleverly waited until Verstappen was quite tight to that corner and then went for it, and thus it meant that he was never going to catch him by the end. So really, really well handled. And as I said at the beginning, no question at all that this guy is World Drivers' Championship material if he can keep this up, because I think he's already shown this level of brilliance in previous cars. And what he was able to do in that Ferrari during their poor years, during when they were in finishing sixth in the constructors and that, what he could do in that car alone was very, very impressive. So now he's got now he's got the machinery. I think there's no question that this guy is on a mission, is on a mission win now, I'm sure.
There we go.
Or is it mission winnow? I don't even know.
I have no idea.
I mean, winnow, that doesn't really mean anything, so I assume it's win now. But
I think it's win now. That's what people refer to, don't they?
But anyway, so yeah, Ferrari very much back. They looked competent, great pit stops, responded well strategy-wise. So it's all positive news for them.
The Ferrari hype train is fully in motion.
Seeing as we're not right at the end of the podcast yet, am I allowed one small whinge before we move on to
a whinge
view from the stands?
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, I must admit to a little bit of whinging. There was I don't think it was a straight up press release, but there was a few journalists who had obviously spoken to FIA types and posted on their Twitter accounts and their sort of news rags and the like that the FIA and the stewards were going to be sticking to those white lines. It's exactly what we were asking for last season and in previous seasons. The track is the track as far as I'm concerned. If all your wheels go outside the white line, you're not on the track. Don't care about curbs. Yeah, you can put on the curbs, but they're not for going all the way over. They're for dipping your tyres on to go around whatever. The track is the track. And they finally came out and said it. The white line is the track. Hallelujah. Thank you.
For every race as well.
Last.
For every race.
Yeah, every race we're going to do it. Finally. It's so simple. You've got all the technology, you can do it. It's easy enough to do now. And then Q1, Perez goes blowing over the curbs. It's miles outside the white line. I'm like, oh yeah, he'll get his lap deleted.
Didn't happen.
Any moment now. Any moment. It should come up on the screen. Oh no, he's through to Q2 with that lap, even though like a blind man on a flying horse could see that he was about, a foot across the white line. What? They ruined it immediately. They're not sticking to it at all. During the race, they were over the curbs. People were outside the white line. I think only one driver appeared to actually get
Joe
a warning.
won you on it.
I think it was Joe. Yeah, somebody. Yeah. I did put it in my notes. But yeah, somebody actually got a warning for it. But there were definitely cars going over that white line plenty of times. So it's already, how can anyone have any faith in them maintaining it now that they can't even manage it in the first race of the season? It doesn't seem like it's something that would be too complicated. They've got all these people and all these stewards. Can't they just have, maybe they can't, but can't they just have one person who's the person that checks to see cars don't go over the white line? There must be a way of doing it. I'm sure it's very complicated, but to make an announcement like that and then to so blatantly not be willing or not be able to actually follow it is very frustrating. Again, it just makes you think, much like a lot of people felt with Abu Dhabi, what even are the rules? What's the point in the rules if nobody can even comprehend them or how they're supposed to be enforced? It just makes it so confusing. And my second whinge, moving swiftly on from that one, is that there are a few directors' issues, really, that we had another similar problem to last year, which is that there's overtaking going on and we're watching something completely pointless. There was a couple of examples like Albon and Zhou. Well, Albon on both of the Alphas were having a bit of a sort of to-do near the back of the grid, and it was nice to see cars all around the field getting into battles. But we were watching it for a good 5 minutes of them just going around after they'd been in a bit of a battle. And meanwhile, there are other overtakes going on around the field and we're not seeing them. And also, there was the racing going on shortly after, it must have been after the safety car had just ended. And there was lots of battling going on. But we were watching Max getting out of his car and driving into the pits. And it's like, yeah, we got it. He's out. Let's look at the racing. And it's the world champion. He's getting out of his car. Yeah, there's a race going on. Can we see the race? I don't care about someone getting out of their car in the pits. Like, it's not, it's not really relevant when there's racing going on. So just little things like that where must do better. See me after class.
Yeah. Did they do any picture in picture this week? I can't remember. I don't remember.
Don't recall any. No, don't recall any of that.
There's good opportunities to use that. If they really want to show Max getting out of the car and how dramatic he's getting out of his car, then put it in a small box in the corner of the screen. Maybe if they got rid of some of the massive timing tower they've got on the left hand side, made that a little bit smaller, they could put a box there. But no, I get what you mean. Why are we focusing on a car retiring, trundling down the pit lane at 10 miles an hour when the race has just been restarted? So who knows? Hopefully they'll learn from the couple of small gremlins this week.
Now it's time for View from the Stands then. Our first View from the Stands in goodness knows how long. I guess we haven't done one since the last race weekend. So it's good to hear from our regulars. A good way to start off the season. We'll start with Daniel Fergie25 on Twitter, who says, "What a dramatic start to the season. Do you reckon we could be seeing many more dramatic moments that could alter the world title race into possibly a 3, maybe a 4-way battle, which could prove to be decisive in Abu Dhabi at the end of the season?" So yeah, Daniel hoping for a 3, maybe 4-way battle for the championship. I have to say that it's hard to imagine exactly who the other one might be for a 4.
We're
3,
talking drivers or teams?
Well, actually, that's a good question. I'm not 100% certain. It just says world title is what Daniel says. So maybe, looking at all 3, let's start with drivers. So I think Leclerc Verstappen is the obvious one to start off with. Hamilton should never be discounted. So maybe that's a reasonable sort of 3. But as for 4, I think Leclerc has the measure of science quite decisively. Perez was looking like he was going to be way down the order after qualifying, was looking pretty disappointing, but did manage to put in a decent Q3 lap and did pretty well in the race, generally speaking. So, but again, it's just not on Verstappen's level. I just feel like there's not really any reason yet to believe, much like Bottas and all the, oh yeah, I really want to try and be world champion this year. You're just thinking there's not really any reason to believe you're suddenly going to become as good as Lewis Hamilton. So in terms of drivers, it's hard to know who the 4th driver could be. Maybe Russell. I suppose it's possible if Mercedes build that car up again. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe Carlos could surprise, but I do think Leclerc really has the measure of him.
Carlos scored more points than Leclerc last year. And I know Leclerc was unlucky on a couple occasions, but I would put Carlos in a higher picture than I'd put Perez. So I understand what you're saying about Perez and how he's up against Max Verstappen, but I think Carlos, will prove more of a challenge than maybe people expect him to be, or do a better job than people expect him to be. I wouldn't count him out just yet. I think he's got more of a chance than Hamilton this year. If I'm being honest, we're looking at the current pace of the 2 cars. Who knows where we'll be in 5 races time? But at the moment, I wouldn't discount Carlos Sainz.
As for constructors, Ferrari, Red Bull, I think Mercedes shouldn't be completely discounted just yet because their capacity to develop is on par with those top teams. So we could see them claw back whatever deficit. We should really mention that. During our testing episodes, and they were. It really was a case of the boy who cried wolf, as I think I recall using those words.
The team who cried wolf,
because they do keep saying, oh yeah, we don't know if we're going to be in the mix, and we're not sure the other teams are looking fast, blah blah, and then they turn up and thrash everyone, and they've done it so many times that nobody believes them. But this time, actually, they really were a bit behind. So I was genuinely surprised. I was genuinely quite surprised by that. So. yeah, they've got a bit of work to do, but they're not exactly miles and miles behind. And Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes have still got the reliability and determination and skill to bring home a podium today when everyone was counting them out. Well, not everyone, but there was a sense that they weren't necessarily joining the party in the same way. But yeah, Constructors' Championship, yeah, maybe Mercedes, but who could be a fourth in that race? I don't really know. I'm not sure how a fourth constructor could come into the mix here just yet. Everyone else is a little bit too far away. I guess, I sadly must say that McLaren are not looking anywhere close to the kind of running for that. So yeah, no one else really comes close to be a number 4 in Constructors. But I'm sure Daniel deliberately left it open so that we could do both of those. A very cunning ruse to get us to talk more.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure that was your motivation. Thanks very much, Daniel. And of course, we also heard from RPM legend Dave Doherty. What's Dave got for us this race?
Dave has tweeted in again, and he has said, "What's your thoughts on the Ferrari strategy and race?" And we've covered little bits about it. Now, if I'm being completely honest, I really lost track of all the strategies in this race, because as the race began, you had that graphic pop up and it was like, it could be a 2-stop race. We could go softs, mediums, or soft, medium, softs, or, softs, hard, or softs. So there's always going to be like a 2-stop race. But I think Ferrari did box 2 times, didn't they? So
Both
if anything,
boxed 3 times.
So exactly. So I completely lost track of what the strategy was, what strategy was going on. But in all fairness, my thoughts on their strategy was that it worked, because no matter what they did, they maintained the lead. They maintained the lead of the race. They were P1 and P3 for the majority of the race up until Max Verstappen retired. It clearly worked, and yeah, they are the leading team at the moment.
Yeah, I think the traditional 1 or 2 stoppers were right out the window pretty early on. It looked like. I think Schumacher was, apart from probably Gasly because he DNF'd, I think apart from Schumacher, everyone did at least 3 stops. So it was a bit
McLaren
all over the
probably
place.
did 5.
No, I think McLaren only did 3 as well.
Really?
I do have it on here somewhere. Yeah, because Ricciardo went from mediums to softs to hards to softs, and Norris went from mediums to hards to softs.
Oh, blimey.
So yeah, it was 3 stops.
Yeah.
3 stops apiece. Yeah, Norris might have been able to go without his third one, but it was the safety car that they were taking advantage of, and they're having their extended test. Yeah, the Ferrari strategy specifically, they sort of were reacting to Red Bull mostly. It seemed that Red Bull were the ones trying to dictate the strategy, which I think was a good idea for Red Bull. Coming from behind, they knew that they could make the undercut powerful, but Ferrari responded pretty well, and yeah, but it didn't really look like anyone was coming to it with an ideal plan. It looked like everyone was kind of making it up a bit as they went along. Was there a clear best strategy? I mean, it seems that, the winning strategy for both of the top 2 teams, which was not replicated by anyone else other than Hulkenberg, Perez, and Stroll, it looks like, was to go softs, mediums, softs. That was the sort of winning strategy. But whether it was a winning strategy because they knew it would be, or because that's just how they happened to react, I don't really know. It wasn't the whole sort of, well, this is what's looking like the best strategy thing was out the window pretty early on, I thought.
Right, let's move on to a driver of the day and championship standings. And traditionally, I come into this segment a little bit unprepared, and likewise today, I've come into this segment pretty unprepared. So, Alex, who was the driver of the day? Was it Charles Leclerc? It was, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, I remember. And well deserved. Started from pole, led every single lap, and set the fastest lap time, and then finished in P1. So great race from Charles Leclerc. My personal driver of the day, so I tried to look at all the drivers and who's had a particularly good day and who's had not just go for the fan favorite. I'm going to give my driver of the day to Kevin Magnussen. We're starting in P7. And gaining 2 positions straight off the start, fighting with a Mercedes and a Red Bull, and really, giving it all and maintaining his own in a car which has traditionally been at the back of the grid, and bringing it home in P5, and just bringing it home because obviously a lot of people had people had issues, and kept it clean, raced hard, had fun, brought it home for P5, and that means so much for the team. So that's why he's getting my driver of the day today.
Nice. Yeah, there was a very healthy number of contenders for me. Magnussen, obviously, you mentioned, done very brilliantly after arriving so late to the team. His position was a little bit flattered by the DNFs, but he did get up to P5 at the beginning, so it's not like he wasn't in contention at all. Stayed strong, put in a great performance to grab more points in one race than Haas have had for years put together. So that was good. Also, I think Tsunoda recovered very well. Again, his qualifying let him down, but he did grab a handful of points after starting P16, so that's good. He just needs to stop recovering and start putting in the pace from a better position. Also, Ocon, who looked like he had the better of his teammate throughout. They were actually battling quite a bit, the two Alpines. And Ocon came out on top. So and he brought it home from he brought it home to P7. I think he started 11th or 12th. Ocon did. So it was not a bad race for him as well. Although he did clumsily connect with Schumacher on lap 1. I think he got a penalty for that as well. So he got a penalty and still beat his teammate. So I think that's pretty decent, all things considered, even if the end result wasn't exactly box office. I think, though, I'm going to go for a quieter but no less deserved shout-out for Zhou Guanyu.
Okay,
who I was not really expecting too much from. He's not exactly got sort of, to me, it seems like an obviously scintillating junior career. He's obviously been good, but he didn't come into it with huge fanfare other than that, first Chinese driver in F1, which is still good. But to grab a point after starting P15 on your debut, looking decidedly racy throughout, he looked really confident straight away and was quite emotional after the race to have brought home the point for his team. So I think anybody who has that kind of performance on their debut, with no doubt a lot of pressure on their shoulders, and it all being very new, because Formula One is such a big step up from every other racing category. It's just orders of magnitude more pressure, more spotlights on you. So to do that on your debut, I think is brilliant and deserves driver of the day on that merit.
Yeah, you've gone through a lot of drivers there, and all of them deserve driver of the day. But I'm particularly impressed with Kevin, and like you said, Zhou Guanyu, what a drive, and like you said, so emotional when he finished as well. It just goes to show that these drivers are human and they're not robots, and they aren't emotionless. They have feelings, and some of them are fighting for their career. Fighting to stay in the job they absolutely love. So that's great to see. Moving on to championship standings, should we start with the drivers' standings?
Yeah.
I was just about to say I'll run through the top 10.
Which is just the race result, basically.
Yeah, I was just about to say I'll run through the top 10 and then you can run through the bottom 10, but the bottom 10 all have 0. So we'll just quickly fly through the drivers and then you can have the constructors. So we've got Charles Leclerc with 26 points, won the race and fastest lap. Great start to the season. Fellow Ferrari driver Carlos Sainz with 18 points in P2. Lewis Hamilton, wouldn't have put him P3 at the start of this race or after qualifying, but you can never discount Lewis, and he brought it home. He brought it home in P3, and he was very excited over the radio to Bono that he achieved P3, actually. It was almost like he had won the race. Clearly Mercedes weren't expecting that higher of result. But Lewis with 15 points, George with 12 points, Kevin Magnussen with 10 points, Valtteri Bottas with 8 points, Esteban Ocon with a great performance with 6, Yuki Tsunoda with 4, Fernando Alonso with 2, and then Zhou Guanyu with the 1 point for Alfa Romeo, which is great. Moving on to the constructors' standings. Alex, over to you.
Yeah, Ferrari obviously starting nicely with 44 points. So it's a strong start over Mercedes 27. You also already mentioned Haas sitting in P3 with 10. I don't know if they're going to stay there, but it's a nice sort of banner way to start off the season. It doesn't really mean much after one race, but good for them nonetheless. Alfa Romeo with 9. Bottas, interesting one for Bottas because he qualified really well and then had a dreadful start. And
that's Bottas.
Was way down, and immediately I was like, oh well,
classic.
That's Bottas. But he fought back he got back to where he started pretty much, didn't he? With the DNS by the end.
Yes.
So that was pretty good going. Alpine with 8, AlphaTauri 4, and then it's Aston Martin, Williams, McLaren, and last at the moment is Red Bull cue air horn sounds and explosions because after one race they're at the bottom. So it's a very very unpredictable and unexpected looking standings after one race, I think. Well, thanks very much for joining us for that episode. The Bahrain Grand Prix, the first race of the season. We finally done it. I think it was brilliant. I think it was a great way to start the new era. All the cars looked great. All the racing was very high quality. So very, very positive way. And you've started in a positive way too by joining us for the Race Per Minute podcast. Do send us any other thoughts or questions that you have about this race or any other F1 related things to us at Race Per Minute on Twitter. You can get in touch at raceperminute.com or comment below if you're on YouTube. And if you like the episode, don't forget to give us a like and press all the various buttons that say that you're happy with what you heard. And if you really like what we do, then you can subscribe to get to all the episodes straight to wherever you are. And if you find yourself with a burning desire to support the show, go above and beyond there is no sort of real call of duty here, but our polite and humble request that you can support us by going to Patreon, patreon.com/raceperminute. You can donate as little as £1 a month. You can donate to my Help Get My Words Out in a Competent Fashion fund. But yes, you can see that there's some lovely rewards on there, and you can help support as we already have one. We already have one race engineer supporting us. Thanks very much, Nathan. And yeah, that's it. We've made it to the end of our first post-race discussion. It wasn't super long. I was expecting we're going to be sit here for 2-3 hours, but I think we've nailed down our format at last. So next
Alex,
we have Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Are you looking forward to the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix? And what are you most looking forward to next week's race?
So I think they've changed the circuit. They've like tweaked it, haven't they? Didn't they say they were going to do that?
They've made it wider in some places. We'll have to have a look.
Yeah, it'll be interesting an interesting test for the cars to follow each other because it's this very fast track and has all these sort of long sweeping corners. So if the cars can stay close in these, then it will be another good trial run for the improvement of the racing. We certainly had a fairly dramatic one here last time. I cannot believe that there was only one real incident in Bahrain of cars coming together.
Yeah.
It's amazing because they supposedly can't see as well, and those front wings are much bigger and look sort of even more fragile. But no, it was all very clean. So I think Saudi Arabia will be a good test of that. It'll be nice to have another race to see how good this track really is, because one race, sometimes you can just have a bunch of random things that happen and it flatters the circuit, you know? The last race that we had in Sochi, for example, was great because there was some drama and some excitement, but the vast, vast majority of the races that we've had at that track, have been pretty dull. So you need a few races to really give a real assessment of that circuit. So I'm looking forward to that, looking forward to some high speeds, and who knows, we might end up with another race winner and all the standings will get shifted around again. It could be ultimate unpredictability. You just don't know. That's the beauty of it. We're in the unknown, which very often is the best place to be in a place like Formula One. What about you?
Well, I'll say we'll find out in 7 days' time, because I just can't wait. I do love having back-to-back races. Maybe not 3 on the trot, but I've managed to. This week and next week, I'm not working a Sunday, so I actually get to enjoy them instead of like hushing all my notifications and then coming home and watching them on demand. But I can't wait. I love Formula One. It feels like it's been a long time since it's been on, and the first race was great. I really hope that level of racing continues into the next one, and I'm interested to see. I don't think any teams will bring any upgrades, but that doesn't matter because the midfield is pretty tight, and we could see some decent racing again. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we'll see you all again very soon. Thanks very much.
We'll see you then.